Hello everyone, this is part 4 of What If Naruto Was the Blue Uchiha, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Not many people knew it, but Naruto was rich. Rich enough for it to seem like being a ninja was a hobby. Rich enough to be comfortably set for the rest of his life, and the lives of any descendants he may have 5 times over. Losing his job wasn't such a bad thing for him, because as previously stated he didn't actually need it in the first place as soon as the Third War ended, but it was losing his ninja way that got under his skin, especially since it was the Yondaime Hokage that had taken it from him under the threat of being labeled a criminal. And yet it was the former that his sister berated him for. How could you be so irresponsible? She snapped, miffed at the calm way her younger brother sipped a glass of water and the lazy way he wiped his lips with the back of his hand, leaning his back on the wall and half listening to her chew him out. The Hokage has given you all the freedom you could ever want and you repay him by disobeying an order. You should consider yourself lucky he didn't execute you on the spot. The woman was half a head shorter than her younger brother, but with the way she was breathing fire down on him, she might as well have been a giant, gnawing on his bones in her teeth. She stood before him, madly flapping her arms around in order to get some sort of reaction from him, and shouted tightly. What are you going to do now? How are you going to pay your bills? How are you going to buy food or clothes? How? Naruto. How? He rolled his eyes, less than interested, and the woman exploded. Don't you dare roll your eyes at me, Naruto. You're the one at fault here. You disobeyed the Hokage's orders and you put Itachi in danger. I swear, every time I hear your name, it's that you're in some sort of trouble. All I ever do is worry. The two siblings were standing at the back of the hall. The furniture of the room had been pushed all the way back to give way for a long buffet table in the center, stockpiled with food and drinks Kushina's shadow clones had rushed to buy on short notice, after the eating contest finished the first round of food. The hall was a quarter of the size of an average training ground, with a merrily burning fireplace on one side, a handful of paintings hung up on the walls, some statues of tailed beasts and humanoid beings, and finally a crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling. Naruto blue eyes slid over the people milling about the Uzumaki princess's main room, serving themselves more food and chatting quietly. He spied the quick looks at them. At him. He caught sight of Yugao, unmindfully staring a painting of a war general Kushina had acquired from hidden salt water, casually sending glances at him as she idly tapped her fork on her nearly empty place of grilled boar, the dish Naruto had brought with him. She turned back to the painting, obviously not paying attention to it anymore, devising how she would pull Blue away from his sister without incensing the Uchiha woman. Are you even listening to me? Mikoto barked, gnashing her teeth. Remember when we were kids and we would get into fights over every little thing? Anything went. Naruto would kick her on the crotch, she would jam her talons into his eyes, he would bite her arm, she would chase him with deadly sharp scissors, and so on. Being 5 years older than him didn't deter her in the least. Blue was a defiant child and Mikoto was stubborn in her ways, feeling that as the oldest sibling it was her sole duty to impose her will on her younger brother. Mikoto detested how different her brother was. Even if you were the one that started the fight, father would always take your side. He wouldn't even give me the chance to defend myself. His eyes dipped down to hers and his lips screwed to the side. You were always Daddy's little princess. He frowned, holding his glass of water firmer. Daddy's little angel. Flashbacks came to them, of their father praising his daughter for executing a fireball, at the expense of his son's wardrobe, or of Hamato Uchiha looking the other way as his daughter smashed his launches underfoot, wrecking weeks and months of blood, sweat and tears in mere minutes. Want to know why I put all of that behind me? Mikoto narrowed her cold black eyes. No, and quite frankly I don't care. I put it all behind me. He smirked secretively when the woman turned away from him with her arms crossed and a terse look on her face. The general read of her body language was staunch disinterest. Because I knew you were jealous of me. She spun back to him, facing him with an astonished expression, stunned that he would think that. If I'm anything, little brother, I am not jealous. Lord Third called me a genius. A dark look crossed over her face and that only made Blue's smirk rise higher. He was mistaken. Ah, sweet denial. Naruto chirped light-heartedly. You're like a children's book, sis, way too easy to read. He only said that because of your fancy launches. You're nothing special, little brother. Naruto looked away and tapped his chin thoughtfully. If you paid any attention, you'd have seen I wasn't putting much mind for that title. Him calling me a genius meant nothing to our clan. I still had to prove my worth, like everyone else. I neither got nor wanted any special treatment. You should know this, your existence was pain. He shook his head, seemingly almost sorry for what he was about to say. Despite all this, I thought you grew out of your petty jealousy and we had what families call sibling loyalty. He air quoted this ironically, like how his birth mother had air quoted him having friends in Konoha. If you have something to say, then say it, the clan head's wife mumbled darkly, impatiently clenching her fist. The taller, though younger, sibling noticed the character trait they shared as children of Hamato Uchiha, hand clenching when they were either frustrated or enraged. Though divergently, Mikoto's own eyes showed through the twitch of her right eyebrow and a flickering frown while Naruto's face would light up sinisterly with an evil grin, like Orochimaru on an extremely bad day. A malevolent, ominous grin that seamlessly stretched from ear to ear. Any other day, Blue's face would be devoid of emotion. Like now. You told Minato I'm going for therapy. He stated easily, cocking his head to the side. Why? He needed to know. The woman fired back, no hesitation and no remorse. You are a threat to yourself and to us. He needed to know of your fragile state or else one day everyone will be caught off guard when you'll flip out and endanger everyone's lives. Blue rubbed his forehead with the fingers of his right hand. Are you even listening to the shit you're hurling at my face? Do you even know how absurd you sound? I did it for the good of the clan and for your sake too. Can I also assume you're the one that persuaded Minato to make me a Class A? No. That was his decision. Really now? Yes, I only wanted him to put a few eyes on you. No one from our clan was going to do it, not willingly anyway. I didn't think he'd get all our friends involved. She narrowed her eyes at him. My question is who told you? I was tipped off. That's not the answer to my question, Blue. She warned sternly. I'm not going to tell you, Mikoto. You'll run and tell Minato and I've already had enough of a headache for 1 week. Let me tell you this though, he fixed his sky blue eyes on her coal black orbs and lowered his voice, the pointer finger of the hand holding his cup of water jutted out and pointed at her face. What you did behind my back makes you a blood traitor. For a split second, worry entered her eyes and she quickly looked around to make sure no one had heard him, then she turned back to him, livid. Before she could open her mouth and rebuke his words, Naruto lifted his right hand and waved to a person a short distance away, chatting with Asuma, Kakashi, Genma and Hayate. Yo, guy. He gestured down with the hand he used to wave, to his sister, saying. Miko says she's not feeling too youthful tonight. The whole hall inhaled at the same time. R.O. Blue escaped as the bowl-cut sporting, green spandex-wearing man sprinted over to Mikoto. Lady Mikoto, do not think so badly of yourself that your youthful youth should be dimmed. He placed a hand on his broad chest and proclaimed. I swear, tonight of all nights, your youthfully youthful youth is youthfully beaming, illuminating this hall of youthful youths with such light that even I, a man in his youthful prime, stagger back in shame. He dramatically stumbled back and blocked his eyes with the back of his hand, mimicking how one would do if they were to dare look directly at the sun. Lady Mikoto's youthfulness cannot be described with such unworthy, uncouth words as mine, but I assure you a woman of your youth can never be less youthful on such a youthful night in such a youthful event. Mikoto's ears rang and she searched around for someone to save her from Guy's youthful tirade, but everyone made it a point to not look at her, hiding their laughter at Guy's ranting and sweat dropping at the Uchiha woman's misfortune. Once my Guy had sunk his claws into the flesh of a person he perceived to not be sufficiently youthful, he never let go until he was satisfied the youth had returned with a fury. Godspeed, Mikoto. Fugaku hung around a statue, wincing at the taijutsu master's loud words, and Naruto passed him, casually saying, How's the arm? A 19-year-old Blue caught Fugaku's right hand as the clawed strike surged towards his face and twisted, smashing his knee into the clan head's right elbow and yanking it downwards, dragging the fractured elbow further apart. Mikoto screamed as her younger brother rammed his other fist into Fugaku's upper arm. The bone snapped with a wet crunch. The man howled in agony. The clan head suddenly felt the two places on his right arm that had been broken by the Uchiha sniper throb painfully, and he grimaced foully at the back of her wife's younger brother as the blue-eyed man passed him. A few moments before he had put Itachi's father's arm in a cast, he had returned the boy home from the forest of death and entered a shouting match with the clan head on the appalling thing they had done to their child in leaving him in the very middle of the forest of death, alone with only a box of matches and a kunai. Fugaku attempted to strike and Blue shattered his arm in retaliation. He bellowed at the man inhumanely. Itachi had abandonment issues, and the infuriated uncle warned his sister to never make the mistake of putting his nephew in that sort of danger again. Back to what he told Mikoto before he left her at Guy's mercy. Blood traitor meant exactly that, a traitor of the blood. A traitor to the family. A traitor to the clan. Most clans had a different word for blood traitors, like the Hyuga called them sightless and the Aburame called them maggots, but the Uchiha clan being older stuck to the ancient name dubbed for traitors that betrayed the clan. Blood traitors were people that leaked damaging secrets of the clan or individual members to outsiders, whether for a profit, scorn, or out of some sort loyalty to the village. The Uchiha clan weren't loyal to the village in the first place, they were loyal to themselves first before anyone else. That was the universal truth. Being an ancient clan, the Uchiha had refined how they defined blood traitors and ensured that school-age children were taught better than to leak clan secrets, as it would be their parents that would be punished for not teaching them properly, which was 50 strokes of a leather belt that had been soaked in oil. The parent of the traitorous child could only wear 3 layers of clothes before their arms and legs were restrained by seals. In the case of adults that betrayed their blood, their punishment was on another level entirely. Blood traitors had their eyes gouged out, chakra sealed and stripped of all their clothing. A collar was placed around their necks and they would be led through the village by Alicia's older members of the clan lashed them with leather belts while the younger generation, anything from 16 downwards, would throw moldy fruits at them. Once the blood traitor had gone through this shameful experience twice round the compound, they were left on their own in the outside world. The person the traitor exposed had the privilege of saying where the traitor was to be left, whether they wanted them in the forest of death at midnight or in the center of the village, still stark naked and humiliated, or if it was of the clan that had been betrayed, then the clan head decided where the traitor was to be left. As it was Blue that had been betrayed, he could decide what would happen to his sister, if that is he informed the clan elders of Mikoto's treachery. To make sure he wasn't just lying, the use of a special Sharingan hypnosis was adopted on the accused in order to get to the bottom of the allegation, and if it was discovered that the claim was false, then the blood traitor punishment was met out on the fault finder swiftly and without mercy, as deceitfully accusing a person of being a blood traitor was in on itself a betrayal of the blood. The punishment might have seemed severe and old-fashioned, but that was the Uchiha way. Gender meant absolutely nothing. The Uchiha way was to show their unity and uniformity before the whole village, instead of exposing critical cracks within their ranks. Even if there was an internal quarrel, it would stay just that, an internal quarrel. They would deal with that among themselves, no outsider needed to know. The Hokage couldn't get involved in the proceedings, nor could any outsider be present, as outlined in Konoha's founding pact, else the Uchiha clan had all right to mass defect from the village. The blood traitor hiding from the clan with the village authority also gave the Sharingan-bearing clan right to defect as well. Blue's clan didn't respect authority, they respected power. Raw power. It was why they had opposed Hashirama Senju being named Shodaime Hokage instead of Madara Uchiha, for they simply didn't respect the soft-handed, kind-faced man as opposed to the ruthless, infamous shinobi that had come from their clan. Pride might have taken priority in their mindset, but it was steeped in some measure of reality. Naruto had said it before, it didn't matter in the least that Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage, had proclaimed him to be a genius. Like every other child born into that clan, he had to claw tooth and nail to prove himself to everyone. Presently, news of him losing his status as a ninja of Konoha had spread all over the village, but that didn't matter in his clan. The blue Uchiha didn't have authority, but he had power. Ninja or not, Naruto had earned his place in the clan. It was why even though the other Uchiha didn't quite understand his way of life as a sniper, they rightfully kept quiet, respectfully averted their eyes from him or politely greeted him as he passed. Blue snapping their clan head's arm was just the icing on the cake. Yes, the clan elders had raised the voices at his actions, though with time they simmered down. Fugaku wasn't of genin strength, one of the reasons he was a certified clan head, and for Blue to break his arm in 2 places meant that he was stronger than the clan's presently strongest clan head. Blue's acknowledged power among his clan mates, that was why no Uchiha in their right minds would agree to spy on him. He was a respected member of the clan and a war veteran. The Uchiha in his generation saw him as an intimidating person, and like the elders of the clan, they kept the distance. Being the clan head's wife didn't exempt Mikoto from clan law, it only meant that she could argue her case for a marginally longer time frame, though outing her brother to the Hokage still made her a blood traitor. Sooner or later, he expected Mikoto to come to him, her dignity in shambles, begging him on her hands and knees to not report her betrayal to the clan elders. Naruto stopped by the food table and poured himself another glass of cold water, instinctively scanning the water in his cup with his Sharingan to ensure there were no poisons inside. Satisfied that no one in the hall full of people he no longer trusted was putting his life in danger, he went ahead and walked with clipped steps to a painting on the other side of the hall, far from his sister and Yugao, not paying much mind to the people that suspiciously stopped talking as he passed them. Not even when Kakashi, Tenzo, Shikaku and Chusa paused in their conversation. Their eyes followed him and he felt them bore into his back with each step, keeping on him even as he stared at the painting before him, one of a rail-thin tiger perched on an extra-thin branch that balanced precariously over a body of water. Beneath the reedy tiger was an inverted reflection, the white and orange stripes were switched and the tiger's reflection was a bulbous, gluttonous-looking tiger. The twig it was standing on looked like it had mere seconds left before it would snap. Blue didn't turn away from the painting when his therapist came beside him, holding a wine glass between his fingers and his other hand on his lower back. I got that piece for Lady Kushina when I went to Iron Country with my wife, Ito. He offhandedly reminded his friend of the name of his wife, and the blue-eyed Uchiha rolled his eyes. Like he'd forget. Inoiki continued. For a flower arranging class that was taking place in the historical village of Mao. Ito wants us to open a flower shop, you see. Blue nodded idly, half listening to the Yamanaka speak and half aware that the entire hall was trying its best to not seem like they were staring at them. During a few sessions, his therapist had told him that Ito Yamanaka had a vested interest in flowers and flower arranging. Inoiki swirled the wine in his glass nonchalantly. The artist said that it was meant to symbolize how the upper class constantly strive for more and view themselves as constantly emaciated when it comes to their wealth, while their honest reflections to the society are that of unneeded, unearned affluence, or something like that. I wasn't really listening. Kushina is the art person. I thought it would be a good housewarming present. Blue tilted his head to the side and cocked an eyebrow, looking at the tiger painting from another angle. I think I see it, I think. Inoiki chuckled at Naruto's confusion. It seemed that art wasn't his forte either. Blue was a marksman, a war veteran and an inventor. Art wasn't much of a concern for him. Mao village of Iron Country was indeed historical. It was the site in which the first leader of Iron was born and the same place he was buried. Aptly named the Vale of Flowers, Mao Village was brought to the world's attention when the present leader of Iron Country, Mifune, proposed that the Five Cages sign a non-aggression treaty in there that would serve to prevent such another war from happening, because seeing as technology was on the rise and shinobi training was becoming more refined, the Fourth War would certainly divide the continent, both figuratively and literally. The five-way contract of ceaseless peace, as the treaty was called, was signed and marked the end of the war for hopefully eons to come. Before the signing, however, Mao was also known for its colorful flowers and foliage, the peaceful scents and the presence of the oldest, largest, chakra-made inactive volcano in the world. The signing was symbolic that peace would reign as long as the flowers kept their color, the wind didn't take the scents from the world and the volcano remained dormant. The volcano, by the way, had not been active for 10,000 years, so the world's prospects were looking up. Naruto's contact in the Iron Yakuza, the red-haired Ronin woman that was a high-ranked gang member of that infamous mafia, was born in Mao, though seeing as she was wanted in Iron for murdering her father and her older sister, two prominent members of the Iron Country Council, she couldn't return to the village of her birth. I can recommend you an exceptional therapist from my clan. Inoiki said suddenly. Blue quirked up an eyebrow, looking at the other blonde from the corner of his eyes. Why? I'm assuming that your trust for me has reduced and trusting your therapist is a vital part of your recovery process. The Yamanaka clan head signed and shrugged tiredly, disappointed. Too bad though, you were an exceptional patient. Naruto smirked a little at the last comment. He didn't want to think of himself as anything special. There were dozens of other ninjas that were being treated of the scars of the former war in Konoha's psych ward of the Konohagakure General Hospital. he was merely a single person in a mass of people. The thing Anoiki meant was that whenever Blue came in for a scheduled or unscheduled therapy session, he came with several boxes of muffins and shared them to the staff of the hospital. It was a nice gesture the doctors and nurses of the general hospital appreciated. Between him and Anoiki though, Naruto was also open during their sessions, so as to better heal from his experiences. I'm not going to replace you, Anoiki. I know it was my sister that told Minato. Naruto waved flippantly. Besides, I think I'm making some real progress. You really are, Blue, the Mind Walker vouched honestly. You've done a lot of bad things and a lot of bad things have happened to you, but that doesn't make you a bad person, it makes you careful. It certainly doesn't make you crazy or a homeland threat. Anoiki finished his glass of wine and it left a bitter aftertaste in his mouth, one that wasn't related to the wine. I told Lord Yondaime this, well, I tried to, but he already had his mind set. As you know, I am part of the Konoha Council, but I was excluded from participating in your surveillance. He cast a hard look at his friend and added, not that I would have, of course. You have an incredibly complex mind, Blue. That is what I've been able to gather from all our sessions. Interested, Naruto turned to Anoiki a little more and masked his words so that his lips couldn't be read. What do you mean? Take your present situation now. You immediately knew it was your sister that revealed our sessions to Minato, instead of trusting in your own family and assuming I was the one. I can only guess that that mind of yours ran through all the possible scenarios and concluded that it would be vastly difficult for me, given that my profession thrives on doctor-patient confidence, to be the one to have betrayed you, while your sister, though being family, had less reason to keep your secret. He crossed his arms, managing not to drop his wine glass. You're smart enough to know that your sister hates you, yet you still told her. Call it a moment of naivety. Anoiki waited for the younger male to continue, but Naruto didn't, instead turning to the tiger painting and sipping his glass of water. The Mind Walker cleared his throat. Naruto, referring to him by his name. I hope you don't misunderstand what I'm about to say, and I hope you don't think of me as an enemy, but, he fully faced the blue Uchiha and Naruto did the same, staring right into the Uchiha's sky blue eyes with his teal orbs. I cannot turn on my village. Naruto laughed a little, a humorless exhale of air. I'm not asking you to. He placed a hand on the clan head's shoulder, keeping eye contact and sincerely saying. Between me and Minato, don't oppose your Hokage, you have your clan, your position in the village and your wife. Unlike me, you have too much to lose. The Yamanaka clan smiled appreciatively. Thank you for understanding, Naruto. I'll send you the contact info for that therapist I'm recommending later. No need to rush. The Mind Walker wasn't going to open his file for the Hokage to read, though at the same time if there was a dispute between him and the village leader, he would take Minato's side. Blue could understand that Anoiki had a life that he couldn't and should compromise for his sake. The only person Naruto would worry for at his absence was Itachi, but even then he was certain that before he met any unfortunate situation he would have already given the boy all the necessary tools he needed to take the world by storm. Kushina also came to mind, but that was a muddle of confusing thoughts. He needed to know for sure if she was truly oblivious to the order Minato had made barely 6 months after the end of the war that designated him a class A threat. Returning back to himself, the hand on Anoiki's shoulder dropped and he asked. Anything new happening with you? The Yamanaka furrowed his eyebrows, then his eyes lit up as he remembered. Ah yes, me and Ito are going to start trying for a baby. If it's a boy, we're going for a Nojin, and if it's a girl, then we'll call her Ino. Blue chuckled, this time warmly, and his eyes closed with amusement. The kid isn't even there yet and you two already have a name. Anoiki laughed with Naruto, scratching the back of his head bashfully. With planning the flower shop and us not taking missions anymore, we're spending a lot more time together. One thing led to another and we started drawing out names. One thing I don't get is your fixation with the letter I. Anoiki waved off Blue's mild look. It's a running gag that ran for too long. Ito and I tried to come up with other names, but the ones with I, and preferably anything with Ino in it, sounded much better. He saw that Blue still was less than convinced, so he scoffed. Humor us, okay. You two really are soulmates. He raised his glass of water and Anoiki clinked his empty wine glass against Blue's own. I'm glad you found her, or she found you, whichever it is. The therapist lifted an eyebrow, confused. I thought you didn't believe in soul mates. Naruto smirked and turned to the painting once more. I don't. I'm humoring you too. The sniper then grunted as a body launched into his own, slinging her arm over his shoulder, though having to stand a bit on her toes to do so. Mitarashi Anko, clad in only a fishnet body, a bright orange miniskirt and a light brown trench coat, grinned slyly. SSS's sup, horsey. Blue blinked twice, then he face-palmed. This party's borin'. There's this nightclub I want to show you, tiddies, lap dances and dango. The perfect combination. Blue rubbed the sides of his temples and groused, speaking quietly. Oh, no. If people weren't looking at them before, they were staring at them now, their jaws hung open and the brains trying to comprehend how unfiltered the snake lady was, and also at how Naruto was keeping a firm cap on himself, restraining his reaction to a muffled hiss. You're drunk. The woman closed her eyes and her grin broadened as she showed the jug of rice wine held in her strong grasp. Zhua lil, horsey. Exaggerating the last word, and she made the gesture with her pointer finger and thumb, cackling at the Uchiha's heavy sigh. Don't worry, I can hold my liquor. She was slurring, though only a little, but Blue could feel how unsteady she was on her feet. She would clatter bonelessly to the ground if he moved away. Anko swayed and giggled again, saying, An, I know you're worried, Tar, with all the tiddies around, I'd be left out. There are some men stripping there, she belched into her jug-holding fist. 2. Naruto looked over his shoulder and called. Kurianai. The red-eyed genjutsu mistress exhaled in frustration, just about to take a bite of Naruto's grilled boar hot pot, formally deciding to ignore how her friend was making a fool of herself. She dropped her plate begrudgingly and ambled to the blue-eyed Uchiha. Yeah, I got her. She reached to chortling Inoiki, and visibly irked Naruto and a shit-faced Anko and placed her hands on the snake lady, doing so gently so as not to alarm the drunk Kanoiki, speaking like how a horse trainer would so as not to spook a horse. Come on, Anko. Let's get you some water. The arm over Blue's shoulder tightened and Anko shook her head. No, I want to ride horsey. Knowing how to deal with her friend when she was drunk, Kurianai slid her arm around Anko's waist and nodded sympathetically, gradually taking Blue's place in Anko's arm hold. I know, me too. We'll get him later, okay. She ran her fingers down Anko's hair and shushed her as the snake lady grumbled. We'll get him later. The red-eyed woman was glad that Asuma was too far away to hear her. Kushina joined them as they steadily walked to the kitchen, wondering how Anko got her hands on her prime sake without raising some sort of fuss from their friends. Conflicted, Yugao didn't know whether to go and see if Anko was going to be okay, or to stay and pounce on Blue once he was alone. Her decision was made for her when Shiro Aburame, Shibi Aburame's wife, snagged her by the elbow and silently pulled her along into Kushina Uzumaki's large kitchen. Inoiki's cheeks puffed up and his face reddened with withheld laughter, until PFFFT. The whole hall tumbled into resounding hilarity. Horsey. The man snorted, tears streaming down his eyes. What does that even mean? It's a fun little name she calls me. Blue explained cryptically, not willing to indulge why exactly Anko calls him horsey. Understanding dawned on Inoiki a moment later. Oh. Blue scratched his cheek and laughed. Don't even start. The noise gradually reduced, but the attention on him didn't drop, and it was starting to get on Blue's nerves. I have to ask, Inoiki, he said all of a sudden. He fully faced the Yamanaka, he didn't mask his words and he didn't speak too lowly, allowing his voice to carry over to the many watchers of the party. What did Minato say that has them thinking I've lost my mind? The blonde man's lips twisted into a frown and he looked around, seeing that the others were gauging how he was going to respond. I'm not yet authorized to tell you. Blue didn't seem to like that answer. He narrowed his eyes and his cerulean orbs turned frosty, terrifyingly cold. He was now more than annoyed and it took a great amount of restraint to not shatter the glass cup in his left hand. He didn't mince his words. One way or the other, I will find out. Kushina might not know anything about the matter, but he did know someone that, with a little nudge, would spill out everything to him, just like when they were kids. Blue was only giving her time to gather her thoughts and her courage before she approached him. Until he got tired of waiting. Calmly, the Uchiha man walked out of the main room in search of a bathroom. Shikaku approached Inoiki, sleepily nibbling on a cookie. He leaned to his close friend and muttered. Troublesome. What were you two talking about? Before Anko came, the Nara clan head clarified with a lazy lift of an eyebrow. Everyone had heard him deny providing classified knowledge to Blue, but they wanted to know the muffled conversation they were having from the very beginning. It was difficult to read someone's lips when the person was masking his words and speaking in a marginally quieter voice. Inoiki's frown had not left his face. He looked down, feeling disappointment seep into his soul again at not having the guts to go against the Yondaime, like the Blue Uchiha. Self-deprivation and resentment overlapped his regret, and it took a grunt from the sleepy Nara to remind him of the previously asked question. The blonde glanced at his friend. Nothing. Don't worry about it. Troublesome. Ooh. At the same time. Hokage's office. Hokage's tower. Minato Namikaze, the Yondaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, didn't like Naruto Uchiha very much. Blue was his rival. It wasn't the hilariously campy, one-sided rivalry Guy had with Kakashi or the friendly rivalry history books said Hashirama Senju had with Madara Uchiha, before it culminated at the Valley of End. The Yondaime was fairly sure that Blue wasn't aware of his rivalry with Minato, or he didn't think much of it. Most days felt like it was the latter, further enraging the yellow-haired Kage. He first noticed Naruto's existence when the Uchiha was 7 and he was 12. It was early in the morning and Jiraiya had gotten permission from his academy teacher to excuse him from class almost as soon as their sensei had started teaching. They went to the park and crouched in a bush. Flashback, 14 years ago. What are we doing here, sensei? Minato wondered aloud, peeking out of the bush and sweeping his eyes around the nearly empty park. Since the Kumo-Iwa coalition had launched that attack a year ago, leading to the Third War, people didn't feel secured enough to leave the safety of their homes, and the Hokage too didn't encourage people to come out unless the reason was essential for their survival. Academy students and ninjas of the village were allowed outside, though it was to safeguard the village or to be shipped out to support the war effort. Minato spotted 2 kids far on the other side of the park, to the left where they could see a forest in the distance. Minato's eyebrow twitched and he whipped to his teacher. You're spying on kids now. Aghast, the Toad Sage gaped at his student. Of course not. Then why are we hiding here? We look like perverts. He looked back out of the bush again and his brow furrowed questionably. And, aren't they supposed to be in school? In times of war, the village needed all the ninjas it could get, so the fee for children to school was dropped and schooling was made free. The 2 children looked familiar too. One wore jean overalls and a dark orange shirt underneath. The kid had purple hair that was tucked into a black baseball cap. The cap had 2 cat ears peeking out from the top. The child also had on a pair of worn-out sandals. Minato made the mistake of thinking that child was a boy, though it wasn't his fault. The overall-wearing kid had boyish features, dressed like a boy and in no way acted like a girl, or any girl he knew for that matter. The tomboy was lying on her back and propped her schoolbag under her head, using it as a cushion against the park bench's cold iron arm. Her ankles were crossed, her hands were behind her head and her eyes were peacefully closed, enjoying the cool wind blowing in from the west. She was a short kid, from what he could see, but she took up her half of the bench. There was also a katana leaning on her side of the bench, one with a red and purple handle with a circular guard, like a full moon cut in half. The sheath was a featureless black color, so the blonde prodigy couldn't see the blade. Minato wouldn't find out the purple-haired kid was a girl for another few years. The other child sat upright with his legs crossed and a drawing book on his crossed legs. His own schoolbag was to his left, close to the overall kid's feet, and since this child was facing forward, Minato and Jiraiya could see the side of his face from their place in the bush. The boy had stormy blue eyes, a marginally deeper shade than Minato's, though he had messy, uncombable midnight black hair with a yellow streak running down from the center of his head to the front right, though this one seemed to be a brighter shade than the Namikaze's. He was wearing a white t-shirt with a large red Uchiha clan symbol stamped on his back, which the 2 watchers couldn't see. What they could see that notified him that the person they were spying on was a child of the Uchiha clan was the smaller-sized red clan symbol on his left chest. The Uchiha boy had on a pair of black shorts, which noticeably had a pair of bright red gloves in the front right pocket, and also dark Converse on his feet. His right hand flowed over the drawing pad and his brow was lowered ever so slightly, his eyes narrowed with concentration. He wasn't looking up, so that meant he wasn't drawing his surroundings. Minato was curious. They're skipping school? He asked in a hushed voice, suddenly feeling uncomfortable at how comfortable the 2 kids looked. 7-year-olds, he guessed, and it looked like they didn't have a care in the world. It looked like any reprimand from their teacher, if they were caught, would fly right over their heads. Minato tuned his blue eyes to his teacher. You want us to retrieve them and take them back to class. Also not aware that Yugao was a girl, Jiraiya said. That one, the one with the cap, is a sword prodigy. He's already surpassed his teachers, but that's not why I brought you here. He motioned with his chin to the other one, sitting back in the bush and scratching the top of his head. The one he's with, the Uchiha, his classmates call him Blue, and he is a genius. Minato was bewildered that the kid skipping class to draw was a genius. Smart kids attended classes and displayed their smarts to the world. It's what he was doing. He was a prodigy after all. The purple-haired child lying on her back and snoozing grumbled and turned onto her side, mumbling something that looked like Naru, I'm hungry. The one drawing flicked his cerulean eyes to his friend, then nudged his bag to her. You can have a bento from my bag. Sitting up with wide, elated and apprehensive eyes, the overalls-wearing child hesitated, not sure if she should take her best friend's hospitality. Are you sure? What are you gonna eat? I knew you weren't going to bring lunch, so I bought 2 bentos, because heaven knows neither his big sister nor his father would prepare food for him. The boy paused from his sketching when he saw that Yugao still hadn't reached her hands into his most precious and most private schoolbag. It's fine. Really. Didn't you say you ran out of money? You're broke too, you know. That's not the point. The Uchiha gave a lopsided smile, not saying anything to her exclamation. What if you want more? And I've already eaten your other bento. Yugao questioned, her stomach objected traitorously. Blue rolled his eyes and went back to drawing. I'll drink lots of water. Sensei said that if food isn't enough, we can fill up on water. Minato was more than confused at this point. How is that one a genius? On a scale of preference, geniuses were of a touch higher importance than prodigies, because the latter were extremely good at what they were doing, so good that it was comparable to adults several years their senior, while the former geniuses were innovators, creators and/or inventors, that could think of and create concepts and weapons that would propel their home village far ahead of others. What they both had in common was that the two things were extremely rare, though geniuses were the rarer of the two. Konoha was blessed to have a handful of prodigies in its history. The first that came to mind was Tsukumo Hatake. And though the man was dead, he truly deserved his moniker, the White Fang. There were sword prodigies, genjutsu prodigies and several more, but before Orochimaru of the Sannin, there was only 2 recorded geniuses. The Nadaime Hokage, Tobirama Senju, and the Mad Uchiha, Madara Uchiha, both of whom were dead. Though referred to as the Professor, the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, was not born a genius. Over the years he became a genius, and that in on itself was a difficult feat. Minato was lucky enough to be a taijutsu and fuinjutsu prodigy, and being prodigious in sealwork was something only seen in the now semi-extinct Uzumaki clan. That boy, Blue, invented a weapon that can take out multiple targets from up to 500 kilometers away. Jiraiya filled in, pushing aside a leaf that had entered his line of sight and squinted at the boy sketching on his drawing pad. And that weapon is still yet a prototype. He has told Sarutobi-sensei that over time, he will improve that weapon and increase the distance. He plans on taking out targets from up to 1,000 kilometers away. I can name 10 jutsus that can do that. Can any of those jutsus kill multiple targets silently? Minato remained silent. Do those jutsus leave behind a chakra signature? The Namikaze's jaw tightened and his blue eyes hardened. Do they take much of your chakra? Jiraiya grunted. Those jutsus, do they affect the terrain? Minato couldn't respond, for any jutsu that could reach 1,000 kilometers away was certain to reshape the earth in one way or the other. The only real change in the terrain after Blue had fired his weapon was the blood spattering onto the ground after he had felled his target. That's it. The Uchiha boy's weapon, crystalline, can do all of that. No. Minato shook his head, feeling some sort of jealousy grow in his gut. An uncomfortable bubble of spite, one he wasn't accustomed to feeling, for his classmates, even the Nara, didn't pose this sort of competition for him. He shook his head, harder. I cannot believe that. Really? He sat back in the bush and crossed his arms. Remember last week, when that Uzumaki girl was kidnapped during the Kumo-Iwa coalition ambush? The Kumo-Iwa coalition ambush on Konoha's territory, the single action that had sparked the Third Great Shinobi War, had occurred just the week before, on what was supposed to be an ordinary Thursday. Hundreds of shinobi stormed Konoha's walls and hundreds of Leaf citizens had lost their lives in their attempts at running for safety or defending their village. One of the notable things that happened during the ambush was that the holder of the nine-tailed fox, Kushina Uzumaki, was taken from her home in the Senju clan compound by Kumo shinobi. Minato was assigned to improve the integrity of the security seals on the wall but had given chase as soon as he heard Kushina's foul cursing. They had entered a dense forest, packed with trees and bushes, and Minato had all intention of fighting to retrieve his classmate. As the Kyuubi Jinchuriki, she was the village's precious asset, so it was his duty to get her back to safety. During his chase, he passed by a few of the Kumo kidnappers, dead via needles rammed into the sides of their heads. Ultimately, the Namikaze was the one that tore into the lower back of the single lightning shinobi that was holding Kushina with an unfinished Rasengan. He caught Kushina's airborne body after he had shredded the Kumo ninja's spine, and the rest was history. The question of who killed those enemy shinobi lingered in his mind. His eyes widened and he whirled to his teacher. It can't be him. Jiraiya simply nodded. But the trees, the forest was too dense. He tried not to raise his voice at the hilarity and impossibility of what the Toad Sage was trying to make him believe. Weapon, or not, that couldn't possibly have been him. I wouldn't have sensed him. The Uchiha boy was firing from the roof of the Hokage's tower, exactly 400 kilometers from where you were. The white-haired sage explained. He found a way to ricochet the projectiles he was firing, needles, if you can believe it, against trees, branches and small rocks. He bobbed his head at Minato's incredulous look. I know, I wouldn't have believed it either if I hadn't seen it for myself. The Namikaze scratched his chin. He might be taking credit for someone else's kill. Did you hear me? I said I saw it with my own eyes. He motioned at both of his eyes with his pointer finger. When I was defending Konoha's east gate, Sarutobi-sensei called me to the roof of the Hokage's tower. Orochimaru and Tsunade were there. He scoffed deridingly. He said, it was to witness the Uchiha boy's genius. Exactly 17 Kumo ninjas, a mix of Chunin and Junin, were brought down by a 7-year-old boy with a long-range weapon. A mental image then came to the 12-year-old Fuinjutsu prodigy, one of the blue Uchiha lying on his abdomen on the Hokage's tower, his blue Sharingan whirring in its sockets and squeezing out shot after shot at the Kumo kidnappers, each one dinging and bouncing against tree trunks before impaling their targets. Each bolt a complicated calculation of variables spiraling in the young boy's head, though at the same time each needle was delivered a split second after the other, giving no room for the Kumo shinobi to gather their wits. Blue's Sharingan would aid very well in anticipating the movement of the people he was striking down, though a majority of the calculations and implementation of those calculations laid on the blue Uchiha's shoulders. No. Minato shook his head. The intellectual skills needed to accomplish such a feat had not been seen in a presently living person since the Orochimaru of the Sannin, and even then the Snake Lady's calculations went along the lines of science and experimentation, not the finer details of body mechanics and unseen technology. Impossible. That one word rang in Minato's head over and over again. You can't expect me to believe that, even if you say you were there. Minato squawked indignantly, motioning to the boy drawing on the bench. He's just a kid. Jiraiya saw it in his student's eyes, buried under heaps and piles of disbelief. Envy. For the Hokage to speak so highly of someone much younger than himself, when the professor hadn't even seen Minato in action yet. You'd best not underestimate him. He's much smarter than his age. He exhaled haggardly. He rebels almost on instinct, makes me wonder what the situation is in his home. Still, I feel like Sarutobi-sensei is giving him too much freedom. Freedom? What do you mean? The boy isn't respectful to him. He lets the Uchiha boy get away with anything. On the contrary, Hiruzen Sarutobi might be the only authority figure that the blue Uchiha respected. He's heading onto the field by this time next year. Jiraiya said begrudgingly. His skills would be essential to the war effort and him staying back here is a waste. Minato didn't want to, but he too saw the benefit of getting a long-range user like Blue out onto the warfront, sniping down enemy commanders while they were in the comfort and safety of their own enemy base, providing overwatch and cover fire as well as the perfect person to want as a rear guard / long-range support. But, I haven't been deployed yet. Minato stammered, pointing at Blue. He's my junior. It can't be helped. The Sannin shrugged. Worst part is that kid with him, the one with the katana, is going to be his teammate. A two-man cell with no definite team sensei. The man answered the question before Minato could utter it. Before anyone can be added, they need to be absolutely sure that they won't slow them down. They're both very smart and the only other person as smart isn't ready for the war. Minato's face still showed he had a question and Jiraiya finished by saying, Kakashi Hatake. The boy was still reeling from his father's suicide. If they are to have a team sensei, then the person has to be a genius or a high-ranking prodigy as well, or else any lesson might seem to be a waste of Blue or his friend's intellect, in turn lowering their morale. What if I steal that weapon, and master it for myself? Will I surpass Blue? He asked himself in his head. Jiraiya's eyebrows shot up into his hairline, surprised at the dark tone in the young boy's voice. As terrible as that sounds, the Uchiha boy has shown that he is not willing to part ways with his weapon. The spiky-haired man sighed. I don't know why Sarutobi-sensei won't just order him to hand it over. Mass-producing that weapon will guarantee us winning the war. Isn't that betraying the Leaf? He does not want to protect his own home. The 12-year-old boy argued, mustering up a reason to hate the Blue Uchiha all the more. And why do they call him Blue, anyway? Is it 'cause of his eyes? I've got blue eyes too. The man grunted, feeling out of place at the growing envy and hatred Minato had within him. As a teacher, he wanted to quell the boy's jealousy, but he didn't. Let that toxic feeling make him stronger. Let it boost his determination. You better step up your game, kid. They both peeked out of the bush again and were startled when they saw that Blue was staring right back at them, his Tsutomu Dojutsu spiraling in his socket slowly. His facial expression as even, more so when his eyes identified Minato Namikaze, Kushina's supposed crush, as well as the Toad Sage, Jiraiya. He dropped his pencil and lifted his right hand, closing it into a fist. He pointed out his thumb, index and middle fingers at Minato and closed his left eye, as if aiming the finger gun him. His thumb bent a little and the Uchiha boy mouthed. Bang. Flashback end. Until the end of the war, Blue had something no single person had, not since Madara Uchiha defected, the respect of the Uchiha clan. Not even the clan head or Uchiha elders had the complete respect of their clan mates. As previously stated, the clan of Sharingan users didn't respect authority, they respected power, and even though his title of genius meant nothing to his clan mates, he had shown time and time again that despite being a long-range expert, he was not be trifled with. Uchiha respect came in the form of deference, lowering of the eyes and bowing, though a little, whenever the person passed by them. That respect went outside of the clan, not in the form of deference but as reverence. The Blue Uchiha was a legend among people of the village and amongst allies. The other reason for Minato's disdain for the Blue Uchiha was that he felt threatened by him. Yes, people feared him, but people also feared Blue more than him. Like back when Minato had issued the order for Blue to remain within Konoha and Tiger Yamato Tenzo and his Anbu team had been commanded to implement that order, but the wood release user had been unable to put his hands on Blue after the legendary sniper gave the black operative one look over his shoulder. Blue stopped being human when he was pissed off. There was a story behind that. Author's note. As an apology for how short this chapter is, here's a look into the next chapter. Next time on Killing Off the Blue Uchiha. Black reptilian scales ran down from under Blue's eyes, over his cheeks, just missing his lips and reaching his chin, warbling and shifting as if they were living tears made of the obsidian scales of a snake. A broad, demented grin tore up his face, exposing a mouthful of serrated daggers and a dark blue forked tongue. The midnight black backdrop of his blue Sharingan deepened, darkened to something no man should ever glimpse, whereas his Dojutsu spun with an insane frenzy in their sockets, creating a deafeningly hollow sound, akin to the empty moans of the eternally damned. Yugao shrunk back as her best friend, this terrible creature of evil and malice, knelt down, went down on one knee before her weakened form and ghosted his fingers down her face, gently closing his eyes with the airy touch of a spirit, not even allowing his claws to mark her pearly white skin. She closed her eyes and words rolled out of his mouth like a river of honey, flowing through into the very pits of the underworld. Close your eyes, Kit. Short for kitten, that was his pet name for her. Yugao wanted so much to smile. He pulled his hunter ninja mask back over his face and stood up from his crouch. The pain of her shattered kneecap was gone, leaving with the wind as the wails and howls of enemy shinobi rend the air as Blue rumbled to Kiribi, carving a bloody path through any Kumo shinobi that blocked his way. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.